that right. We use these for around about 90% of the whiskey that we make here at Deanston, and these are actually ex-bourbon casks. So we buy these in from the United States, states like Kentucky, where they mature bourbon. We get them in for around about £100 a cask, which is relatively cheap. The reason for that is that in Kentucky you can legally only mature bourbon in one of these casks once. After that you have to find something else to do with it. The reason for that is simply that in the early 1920s, bourbon makers were continually reusing the old casks, and what this meant was that the woodworkers, people like coopers and loggers, it's placed inside of these. It's actually colourless. It picks up 100% of its colouring and about 70% of the flavouring from the wood that it's matured inside. And with these bourbon casks here, the wood that it's matured inside of is American white oak. So what that does to your whiskey is it gives it a very nice golden colour, and the flavours it instills on it are flavours like honey, caramel, vanilla, oak, things along those lines. On my left here you'll see from Leeds, that's where all the machines were built. The machines themselves were very well maintained, they very rarely broke down. The machines themselves were so self-sufficient that it dropped down and it's been crushed by two large cylinders, as you can see them here roughly, and it's then dropped down, and what's that is called is our grist. So I'll pass that down, right this way. Go through all this with the computer. We're here at Deanston because of the traditional way that we make whiskey. We still use our chalkboard with chalk, and also this here. It's essentially our sorting box to check our grist. So what we'll do is we'll take a sample every few days or every few hours depending on the load. And what we're looking for is a breakdown of three things. So at the bottom what we want is about 10% flour. In the middle we want about 70% of our grist. And on the top we want about 20% of our husk, which is essentially just the shell. The reason that we check that is that if we were to go through the next phase of production, which is the mashing, when we had too much flour, it could potentially clog the machine, make it very thick, porridge-like. If we have too much husk, the water will drain too quick. So it's all about checking it and keeping up that consistent quality here at Deanston. Apart from that, when you guys have finished passing that around, just a small square yellow circle in the room. That's you guys can stand in there. Just separate guys who are working in the facility nearby, just passing through. Exact replica of the one that was built here originally in 1966. It's one of the largest open top mashes in Scotland. There's only around about 6. The reason for that is modern ones these days are covered on the top. It conserves energy better and there's less chance of contamination. However, because of the traditional way we make Deanston whiskey, we chose to maintain this, as any impact on the flavour could be attributed to that. Along with about 40,000 litres of water and then heated to about 64 degrees. And it's allowed to sit and soak. It's moved around by a large arm, and what happens in that process is we're beginning to extract the sugar from the starch in the grist, and that's what we're looking for to make our alcohol. So that's then fed down through there into a pipe into here, and what we have at this point is called our wort. It's essentially an extremely sugary water. 1 cup of it is around about the equivalent of 10 shots of espresso, so it's full of sugar. We'll then do a second wash of our grist that's left in here. This time we add 19,000 litres of water and we heat the temperature up to 78 degrees to get that starch right out of there with the sugar, and then that's again added here. We'll then do a third and final wash here at Deanston where we add 35,000 litres of water and increase the temperature all the way up to 90 degrees to try and get that final little bit of sugar that's hanging onto our grist. Unfortunately, the sugar that we extract from that isn't actually enough to add to our wort without lowering the overall sugar concentration, so that's stored above us, and then we'll use that on the first cycle with the new water when we do a fresh batch so that we're getting as much out of it as possible. After this process, we're left with a lot of husk and oat at the bottom of this. Essentially all we do is that's sold to farms through this pipe down here, so they'll come and collect it, and there they can use it for things such as cattle feed, fertiliser, biofuels, various things like that. So we're all about trying to get as much out of what we can here at Deanston. We try not to have any waste at all. And that heart that we get out of that process is stored into our spirit vat here. Now at this point what we have still isn't technically a whiskey, it's what's known as a new made spirit. it's not legally a whiskey until it's been stored in the cask for at least 3 years and 1 day, some people say, and that 1 day is just to account for leap years. Now, most distilleries at this point will sell off quite a large amount of their new made spirit to be used in blends. Here at Deanston, we sell off about 80% of ours, and we're used in ones such as Scottish Leader and Black Bottle. And a blend is just a mixture of different distilleries' new made spirit matured somewhere else. The reason we do that is it gives us that instant profit, because if you imagine, it takes quite a while to see some money back from your whiskey that is maturing for 8 to 12 years. So it allows us to cover overheads and things like that and keep production going. So that's why we sell off about 80% of our new made spirit. Now what happens in here is our barrels are brought over. They're weighed once on that square thing you guys might have seen, just essentially a weight. So weighed once there when it's empty, and then it's brought down here where it'll be filled, and each of these guns here. So one of these controls the new made spirit, and one is demineralized water. And when they add those into the cask, what it does is it lowers the percentage from 70 to 63.5%, which is just more optimum for making whiskey. Now they don't have an automatic shut-off or anything, these, so when our engineers, technicians are filling the casks up, they have to do it all by ear. Typically it takes around about 2 to 3 minutes to fill a cask fully, and when it's full, they'll weigh it again, and then they'll put the name of the distillery, the year that it was put inside of the cask, a unique barcode on it so we can find it within our system. At this point, again, as I was saying, it's not legally a whiskey, but it's also not taxed at this point. The reason for that is that the casks themselves are watertight, but they're not airtight. So when they're sitting maturing for several years, they'll lose a percentage of that due to evaporation. That's called the angel share, and we'll move into that more in the next room. Apart from that, there's not too much more to see here. So if you guys have any questions or want any pictures, feel free, and then we'll head through.